It's easy to forget where it all began. Before the conventions, the reruns, and the iconography, there was simply a man in a cape and a woman in a catsuit, stepping onto a soundstage that would change their lives. The cameras captured their characters, but something quieter played out in the spaces between takes. What the world saw was chemistry. What no one knew was how deep it ran. For decades, it lived only in glances, in silence, in moments that passed without a name. Julie Numar and Adam West, two names etched into television history, carried something off-screen that remained untouched by gossip or time. No confessions, no scandals. Just something unspoken, preserved like a pressed flower in the pages of memory. Back then, things were simpler and harder. Privacy meant everything. Vulnerability even more. So the story stayed hidden, not out of shame, but out of reverence. Years passed. Generations watched. But that quiet bond lingered, just beneath the surface. And now, after a lifetime of silence, the curtain gently lifts, not for drama, but for truth. The Batman series aired for only 3 years, but its impact echoed far beyond the screen. With its vibrant style and theatrical charm, it brought something unforgettable into the homes of millions. At the center of it all stood Adam West and Julie Numar, embodying Batman and Catwoman not just with performance, but with presence. He was dry-humored and resolute, she was elegant and sharp, and together, their chemistry was undeniable. Each scene between them felt charged, not with overt passion, but with something quieter, deeper. While fans delighted in their playful back and forth, there was a subtler story playing out behind the lens. From the earliest days on set, cast and crew noticed a certain rhythm between the two. Adam's gaze would linger. Julie's tone carried layers beneath the lines. It wasn't dramatic, nor was it secretive. It was restrained, a connection held gently between professionalism and something more. In a time when privacy was sacred and vulnerability could cost a career, both actors chose discretion. They worked long hours, gave everything to their roles, and at the end of the day, walked away without leaving a trace. No rumors followed them, no headlines emerged. But the energy they carried in their scenes told a different story, one written in glances and pauses. After the show ended, their lives diverged. Adam embraced his legacy, speaking often about his time as Batman with warmth and humor. Julie chose a different path. She moved away from the Catwoman image, exploring theater, art, and invention, appearing only occasionally at fan events. When asked about Adam, her answers were always respectful, always brief. She praised the work, acknowledged the past, but never invited deeper speculation. Still, every now and then, something would slip through. A comment that felt too precise, a smile that hinted at memory. Over time, those fragments formed a quiet pattern, one that fans noticed but never fully understood. And for decades, that was where the story remained. In the spaces between words, in the emotion left unsaid. But time, as it often does, began to soften the silence. As the years passed, Julie Numar remained a figure of grace and mystery. She held her privacy like a veil, not to hide, but to preserve. Interviews came and went, and with each appearance, her language stayed elegant, careful, composed. When speaking of her time on Batman, she focused on the craft, the culture, the legacy. If Adam West came up, her tone remained unchanged, respectful, warm, but always measured. It became clear there was a line she would not cross, a space she refused to open. A decision that only deepened the fascination around what might have remained unsaid between them. Still, there were moments. In rare essays and reflections, Julie hinted at something more. Not in direct statements, but in fragments. Stories of silent understanding, of emotional connections that never found a voice. She wrote about love that lives in memory, about feelings left untouched by time. When she mentioned Adam, it was sparing, yet unmistakably delicate. Too professional sometimes, she once remarked, a sentence that said little but implied volumes. At conventions, she would meet the inevitable questions with charm and deflection, answering without revealing. Fans learned to read between the lines, to search her pauses for meaning. The mystery remained, not guarded out of denial, but held in a kind of quiet reverence. Then, in 2017, Adam West passed away. The world mourned the man who had become the face of a generation's Batman. Julie's tribute appeared online. Short, poetic, and composed with the same restraint she had always shown. There were no long stories or public grief. Just a single message about honor, about the weight of a cape, and a heart never spoken aloud. That silence spoke louder than any eulogy. It echoed with the ache of something unfinished, yet too fragile to force open. For a time, that seemed to be the final word, a curtain closing on a story never fully told. But something shifted. With age came reflection, and with reflection, the walls began to lower. Julie, now nearing 90, began to speak with a different tone. Her interviews turned softer. The distance she once maintained gave way to moments of vulnerability. The persona that had long protected her started to blend with the person behind it. There was a sense that she had carried something for too long, not out of regret, but because the world had never been quite ready to hear it. And now, she was ready to let it go. It happened during a quiet fan Q&A, streamed online, almost casually. A question was asked, respectfully, gently, about Adam, and whether she ever wished she had said something to him. She paused. And in that pause, decades seemed to fold into a single breath. Then, with clarity and calm, she spoke. She said there was something she never voiced. That she had admired and loved him, not in a dramatic way, but with quiet depth. That perhaps he had looked at her in the same way. And that both had chosen silence over risk, choosing to preserve something fragile rather than expose it to the world. She described their private conversations. Not about scenes or lines, but about life, fear, and identity. Adam had confided in her, not as Batman, but as a man struggling to balance the hero he played with the vulnerabilities he lived. In those moments, they were not co-stars, but companions. And yet, they never let it become anything more. Julie admitted she was afraid. That naming what they felt might ruin it. That sometimes, what remains unspoken can be more powerful than anything said aloud. Her words did not rewrite the past. They did not undo the choices made or the years of restraint. But they reframed everything. The story was never about mischances or hidden scandal. It was about something rare. An affection that lived not in action, but in presence. A connection built not on what was done, but what was shared in silence. In the wake of that quiet confession, the truth no longer needed to be proven. It had always been there, in the space between Catwoman's smirk and Batman's gaze, waiting to be understood. Julie's revelation did not come with fanfare. There was no media storm, no sensational headlines. Just a quiet moment, shared in passing, that carried more depth than a lifetime of speculation. Her words settled gently but deeply, resonating with those who had watched for years, who had felt the electricity between Catwoman and Batman without ever needing it explained. What she shared did not unravel the past but gave it shape, a contour to the emotions that had long lived in silence. Fans returned to old episodes with new eyes, seeing now what had always been there, hidden between the lines. The glances that lingered, the soft hesitations in their voices, all of it reframed, not as performance alone, but as echoes of something real, something human. In the months that followed, Julie spoke a little more openly, but always with care. She never turned their story into a spectacle. Instead, she honored it, preserving its quiet dignity. Her essay, What We Never Said, became a kind of farewell, not just to Adam, but to the guarded unspoken bond they had carried for decades. In her words, there was no bitterness, only peace, and the acknowledgement that some connections are not diminished by time or silence. They are made more powerful by it. The story of Julie Numar and Adam West, once left in the shadows, now lived in a softer light. It was not about what could have been. It was about what was, in all its restraint, complexity, and grace. Julie described it not as regret, but as something sacred. A feeling untouched by the noise of the world. A memory sealed between two people who understood the cost of being seen, and chose instead to protect what they held dear. In the years since Adam's passing, Julie continued to reflect with clarity and poise. She spoke less of characters and more of legacy. Not just in film, but in the moments that shaped her life off-screen. The weight of that silent connection stayed with her. Not as a burden, but as a part of her story that had never needed to be shouted to be real. Their legacy, once defined by colorful costumes and comic book flair, now carried another layer. One of restraint, of truth held gently, of love never claimed but never lost. Fans embraced this deeper narrative. Not because it changed the show, but because it made it whole. The Cat and the Bat, long frozen in television history, were now remembered not just for what they portrayed, but for who they were beneath the mask. As time moves on, their story remains, not as a legend rewritten, but as one revealed. A story that teaches how even in the glitter of fame, the most meaningful bonds can unfold quietly, privately, and without expectation. Julie's late-life truth became a final note in a symphony played long ago, echoing through the hearts of those who listened closely. That chapter may be over, but it shaped everything. In its silence it spoke volumes.